Sarah Martinez smoothed down her simple blue dress as she walked into the Grand Plaza Hotel, her heart beating with anticipation. Today was her daughter Emma's wedding day, and despite everything, she couldn't help but smile. The lobby gleamed with marble and crystal, exactly the kind of venue her future son-in-law's family would choose. "Mom." Emma's voice rang out across the lobby. Sarah turned to see her daughter, still in her regular clothes, hurrying toward her. "You made it." But there was something tight about Emma's smile, a tension in her shoulders that Sarah recognized all too well. "Of course I made it, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss your big day." Sarah reached out to hug her daughter, but Emma took a small step back, her eyes darting around the lobby. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Emma began, wringing her hands. "James's family, they've made some changes to the seating arrangements." Sarah's stomach tightened. She'd been expecting something like this ever since James's mother, Patricia Thompson, had taken over the wedding planning. "What kind of changes?" "They've moved you to the back table," Emma said quickly, the words tumbling out. "Near the kitchen entrance. Patricia says it's because of the photographer's setup, but—" She trailed off, unable to meet her mother's eyes. Before Sarah could respond, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Emma, what are you doing down here? We need you in the bridal suite immediately." Patricia Thompson strode across the lobby, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Her eyes swept over Sarah with barely concealed disdain. "Oh, you're here." Sarah straightened her spine. "Hello, Patricia. The hotel looks lovely." Patricia's lips curved into a cold smile. "Yes, well, we wanted everything to be perfect for James and Emma. Speaking of which," she turned to Emma. "Darling, your hair appointment was scheduled for 10 minutes ago. You don't want to keep everyone waiting." Emma hesitated, looking between her mother and future mother-in-law. "Mom, I'm sorry about—" "Go on," Sarah said gently. "It's your day. Don't worry about me." As Emma hurried away, Patricia's facade dropped. "Listen," she said, her voice low and cutting. "I know Emma insisted on having you here, but let's be clear, you don't fit in with our crowd. The Thompsons have a certain reputation to maintain." Sarah kept her voice steady. "I'm here for my daughter." "Yes, and you can support her from the back of the room. We don't need your modest circumstances ruining the wedding photos. I'm sure you understand." Patricia's smile was sharp as glass. "Oh, and we've arranged for the staff meals to be served at your table." It seemed appropriate. With that, Patricia turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the vast lobby. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the humiliation. She thought about the extra shifts she picked up at the hospital, working as a nurse to help pay for Emma's education. About the nights she'd spent helping Emma study for her medical school entrance exams, proud beyond words when she'd been accepted. Now her daughter was marrying into the Thompson family, owners of the largest hospital network in the state, and suddenly Sarah's decades of hard work meant nothing. She found her way to the ballroom, where the wedding would take place in a few hours. The space was stunning. Crystal chandeliers caught the light, fresh flowers adorned every table, and a string quartet was setting up in the corner. But as she walked toward the back of the room, she saw it, her table, partially hidden behind a large pillar right next to the swinging kitchen doors. "Mrs. Martinez?" A young woman in hotel staff uniform approached her. "I'm Jenny from Event Services. We were told you'd be seated here." Sarah nodded, noticing the sympathy in Jenny's eyes. "That's right. The thing is," Jenny lowered her voice, glancing around, "I wanted to let you know, while the staff here, we all know who you are. My sister was at County General last year when you worked that terrible 30-hour shift during the crisis. You saved her life." Sarah blinked in surprise. She remembered that night. A massive pileup on the highway had overwhelmed the hospital. She'd stayed long past her shift, working until she could barely stand. Jenny continued, "We think it's wrong how they're treating you, and we wanted you to know, if you need anything, just ask. The whole staff is on your side." For a moment, Sarah stood there, processing Jenny's words. Then she remembered something that could change everything. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Actually," she said, a small smile playing at her lips, "there is something you could help me with. But first, I need to make a call." As she dialed a familiar number, Sarah watched the Thompson family sweeping through the ballroom, directing staff and making demands. Patricia was at the center of it all, gesturing dramatically about some perceived flaw in the table settings. "Hello, Marcus. It's Sarah Martinez. Remember that favor you owe me? I think it's time to cash it in." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah watched from her corner as the ballroom filled with guests, all dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. She couldn't help but notice how the Thompson family greeted each arrival with elaborate embraces and air kisses, at least until they spotted her. "Is that her?" She overheard one woman whisper to Patricia, "The mother who works as a nurse." Patricia's response was just loud enough to carry. "Yes, unfortunately. But don't worry, we've managed to keep her out of sight. Can't have anything spoiling James's big day." Sarah checked her watch. Any minute now. The first sign that something was wrong came when Jenny and 3 other servers suddenly removed their uniforms, revealing street clothes underneath. They walked straight through the middle of the ballroom and toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Patricia called out, her voice sharp. "We haven't even served the appetizers." Jenny turned, her head held high. "We quit." Before Patricia could respond, more staff members began following suit. The bartenders packed up their tools. The valet parking attendants walked off their posts. Even the wedding coordinator closed her laptop and headed for the door. "What is the meaning of this?" Patricia's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "You can't just leave. We have a contract." "Actually," a deep voice said from the doorway, "they can." Marcus Chen, CEO of the hotel chain, walked into the ballroom. His presence commanded immediate attention, and Sarah had to suppress a smile as she watched Patricia's expression shift from anger to confusion to desperate charm. "Mr. Chen." Patricia hurried forward. "There must be some mistake. We booked this venue months ago, and now your staff is following my direct orders," Marcus finished for her. He turned to address the crowded room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but the Grand Plaza will not be able to host this event today. All staff have been instructed to cease operations immediately." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests began murmuring. James's father was shouting about lawyers, and Emma, poor Emma, looked like she might faint. "Mom," Emma made her way through the crowd to Sarah's side. "What's happening?" Before Sarah could answer, Marcus spotted her and smiled warmly. "Sarah, there you are." Patricia's head whipped around so fast Sarah worried she might hurt herself. You know each other." "Know each other?" Marcus laughed. "Sarah Martinez saved my daughter's life last year. Spotted a rare condition that every other doctor had missed. Stayed with her through the night, monitoring her personally." He turned to Sarah. "I told you then. Anything you need, anytime." "I meant it." The pieces were starting to fall into place for the guests. Sarah could see the dawning horror on Patricia's face as she realized her mistake. "But more than that," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the now silent room, "Sarah Martinez sits on the board of directors for our hospital group's charitable foundation. She's been instrumental in directing millions in funding to underprivileged communities. When she called to tell me how she was being treated at her own daughter's wedding." He shook his head. "Well, let's just say the Grand Plaza doesn't associate with that kind of behavior." Emma stared at her mother, tears in her eyes. "Mom, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever say anything?" Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "Because I wanted you to make your own way, sweetheart. I never wanted my connections to influence your choices." She paused, looking around the room. "But I also won't let anyone treat us like we're beneath them." "This is ridiculous." Patricia's voice was shrill. "You can't just shut down our wedding. Do you know how much we spent?" "Oh, I'm not shutting it down," Sarah said calmly. She nodded to Marcus, who gestured to the staff waiting by the doors. They began wheeling in new serving carts, and fresh teams of waiters entered the ballroom. "I'm taking over." Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as Sarah continued. "The wedding will proceed, if Emma and James still want it to, but under new management and new seating arrangements." James, who had been watching everything unfold in stunned silence, finally stepped forward. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry. I had no idea my parents were treating you this way." He turned to Emma. "And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you and your mom sooner." Emma looked between her fiancé and her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm sorry too. I should have said something." "No more apologies," Sarah said firmly. This is still your day. Let's make it a good one. She turned to the gathered guests. Everyone who'd like to stay and celebrate Emma and James's wedding is welcome, as long as they understand that in this room, everyone is equal. Everyone is family. The transformation that followed was remarkable. The Thompson family, thoroughly humbled, retreated to quiet corners. The other guests, free from the atmosphere of judgment and pretense, began to relax. And Emma was glowing with pride as she looked at her mother. As the ceremony began, slightly delayed but more genuine than it would have been, Sarah took her seat in the front row. Jenny, who had changed back into her uniform along with the other staff, caught her eye and winked. Sarah smiled, thinking about how different this day had turned out from what she'd expected. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about standing up and showing your true worth. But there was still one more surprise in store for everyone. As the reception began, Sarah watched the transformed atmosphere with quiet satisfaction. The string quartet played softly in the background while guests mingled freely, the former social hierarchies forgotten in the wake of the afternoon's revelations. Patricia Thompson sat at a table near the kitchen doors, the very one she'd assigned to Sarah, looking thoroughly deflated. Her husband Richard kept checking his phone, no doubt trying to assess the social damage of the day's events. Sarah almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Mrs. Martinez? James approached her table, looking nervous but determined. Could we talk privately for a moment? Sarah nodded, following her new son-in-law to a quiet corner of the ballroom. James took a deep breath before speaking. I want you to know, he began, that I've made some decisions. I'm stepping away from my family's hospital administration position. Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. James, that's not necessary. It is, he insisted. I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. I went into healthcare administration because it was expected, but he straightened his shoulders. I want to go to medical school, like Emma. I want to help people directly, the way you do. A warm smile spread across Sarah's face. Emma never told me that. I never told her, James admitted. I was afraid of disappointing my parents, but after seeing you today, how you handled everything with such grace and strength, I realized I've been living my life trying to please the wrong people. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus Chen appeared at her elbow. Sarah, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you. He gestured toward the ballroom entrance, where an elegant older woman stood waiting. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she recognized Dr. Catherine Reynolds, the current health commissioner for the state. Sarah Martinez, Dr. Reynolds said warmly, approaching their group. I'm so glad I could make it, even if I am fashionably late. Patricia and Richard Thompson, who had been watching from their table, practically tripped over themselves rushing over. Commissioner Reynolds, Patricia gushed. What an unexpected honor. Save it, Patricia. The commissioner cut her off coolly. I'm here to speak with Sarah. She turned back to Sarah with a smile. The board meeting is next week, and I wanted to discuss this in person. We've reviewed your proposal for the new community health initiative, and we're not just approving it, we're doubling the funding. The Thompsons' jaws dropped in perfect synchronization. But more than that, Dr. Reynolds continued, I'm retiring next year, and the governor has been asking for recommendations for my replacement. She gave Sarah a meaningful look. I'd like to put your name forward, if you're interested. The ballroom had gone quiet again, everyone straining to hear the conversation. Sarah felt Emma's hand slip into hers. She hadn't even noticed her daughter approaching. Mom, Emma whispered, you never told me about any of this. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. I've always believed that our work should speak for itself. All those nights I was just working extra shifts. I was also building relationships, creating programs, finding ways to help more people. I never needed the recognition. I just wanted to make a difference. And that, Dr. Reynolds said firmly, is exactly why you're perfect for the position. Patricia Thompson looked like she might faint. But she's just a nurse. Just a nurse? Dr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Thompson, just a nurse. Sarah Martinez has done more for healthcare in this state than your entire family's hospital network. While you were planning galas and worrying about social status, she was actually saving lives and changing the system from within. James stepped forward. Commissioner Reynolds, I'd actually love to hear more about the Community Health Initiative. I'm planning to apply to medical school. Medical school. Patricia interrupted, her voice shrill. But you're supposed to take over the family business. No, Mother, James said firmly. I'm going to make my own way, just like Emma did, just like Mrs. Martinez taught her to do. The reception continued into the evening, but with a distinctly different tone than anyone had expected. The Thompsons retreated to their table, their social cards thoroughly played. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself surrounded by guests eager to discuss her work and vision for the future of healthcare in their state. As she watched Emma and James share their first dance, Sarah reflected on how differently this day had turned out from what she feared. She hadn't set out to humiliate the Thompsons or prove her worth. She'd simply refused to be diminished by their prejudice. Jenny appeared at her side with a glass of champagne. You know, the young server said with a grin. When my sister told me about the nurse who saved her life, she said you were some kind of angel. I think you might actually be a ninja. Sarah laughed, accepting the champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about standing tall and letting your actions speak for themselves. Later that night, as the reception was winding down, Emma found her mother alone on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city lights. Mom? Emma's voice was soft. I'm so sorry about everything. Not just today, but I've been pulling away from you, trying to fit into James's world. I forgot who I am, who you taught me to be. Sarah turned to her daughter, seeing not the bride in her expensive gown, but the little girl who used to fall asleep reading medical textbooks because she wanted to be just like her mom. You never have to apologize for trying to find your way, Sarah said, pulling her daughter into a hug. But remember, your value isn't in who you marry or what family you join. It's in what you do, how you treat people, and the difference you make in the world. Emma wiped away a tear, careful of her makeup. I know that now, more than ever. She paused, then added with a small smile, Health Commissioner Martinez. Sarah laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Why not? After today, I'd say anything is possible. As they stood there, mother and daughter looking out at the city together, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. The Thompsons had tried to put her in her place, not realizing that she had built her own place, one of respect, dignity, and real accomplishment. The next morning, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. The staff can't stop talking about yesterday. You've become a legend at the Grand Plaza. Sarah smiled as she typed her reply. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living your truth and letting others learn from it. As she set her phone down, Sarah thought about all the paths that had led to this moment. Years of hard work, quiet dedication, and unwavering integrity had built a foundation that no amount of social snobbery could shake. The Thompsons had seen her as just a nurse, not realizing that every life she touched, every program she built, and every relationship she forged had created a legacy far more valuable than their superficial status. In the end, she hadn't needed to destroy them. She'd simply needed to stand in her own light and let the truth illuminate everything else. And as she prepared for another day at the hospital, commissioner's nomination or not, she still had patients who needed her. Sarah Martinez smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right.